Okay, people. So it's December 18th, 2017. It's probably going on 2 a.m. in the morning. I haven't been getting as much done as I would like. Another one. But I'm working on it. Alright. What I want to say is, as I'm working on it, they released Uncle John with no ID. Absolutely none. And you have to remember, people, he was 75 years old, legally blind, completely stressed out, was on opiates of some kind, right? And had been stagnant from the time he got in to the time he was taken out of there. Confined basically to a bed and a wheelchair. Right? And they just released him with no bracelet in case of an emergency or something, right? So that whoever found him could take him back, right? So right now I'm under the residential care regulations, and as John's representative, they broke the rules. That's pretty much what it's boiling down to here, people. I've been saying it for a long time. I've just been saying it in the wrong way, right? And, anyway, I, just wanted to point that out. You know, it's not very professional on Fraser Health Authority's side to be releasing a man that could barely walk and couldn't see no more than 1 foot in front of him. And after that, everything's all blurry. And even then, it's all blurry. Right. So, he was signed over to someone that took him across the ferry and then rushed him to emergency and used taxpayers' dollars to cover up her dirt, basically. Right. Well, Fraser Health Authority wants to pussyfoot around that concept because they know that under the residential care regulations, they broke a lot of rules. Right? That's why they're trying to hide it with this, well, he was a child and the doctor said it was okay for him to walk out the door with whoever he walked out with. And I'm thinking more like hauled out of there in a hammock, sleeping like a baby, not even aware of what was going on with him. Yeah. I don't think they were bringing somebody in with a hammock, because they would do that at the hospital, right? Before they would bring him in on a hammock with a whole bunch of people hovering around him. Taking him out like that. That sounds more like a take-out move than a bring-in move. With some snotball woman saying, "Oh, you're being rude." Because I walked in and I was at the door, people, and I seen this and I'm like, "Where's John?" I expected to see John sitting in his wheelchair versus a bunch of people standing around John's bed with clearly a hammock in the bed, with some snot-ball woman saying, "Ooh, you're being rude. This is a private matter." And because I'm polite, right, I didn't want to go and interrupt. I just took it for face value. You know how they say, believe half of what you hear and none of what you see. Isn't that the way it goes? Or believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. Right. So anyway, I am going to make inquiries before I have to submit this appeal. I hate cats. I have too many cats, man. I got stuck with all these cats. John left me with all these cats. And I run around the house saying, "John, why did you leave me with all these fucking cats?" But anyway, I'm going to make inquiries to see if I can get a consultation from a lawyer agency. Like an agency of lawyers. Before I submit this appeal. Now, I've written already 3 paragraphs on the computer. And it went pretty fast, actually. It was, in my opinion, I think I did a pretty good job with those 3 paragraphs. But then what happens is you get gaslighted. I'm being gaslighted again, people. I was being gaslighted at the hospital and at that care facility because, again, the agenda was completely different from what John and I were thinking, that's for sure. And there was a lot of moves in there to remove me from my position as his representative, which is clearly stated on camera in several conversations with him. Right? With the last one requesting for me to get us a lawyer. And then he disappeared. So, for me, that's a trump card. Because I was his representative and I have it on video with him stating that. In addition to asking to go get a lawyer. So, that's what I'm going to do. Again, I'm going to see, now that I've got more it put together, right, it might be easier to separate the riffraff from the meat, right? In terms of actual laws and why we have them, right? So anyway, there's no guarantee that I'll even get a meeting for that consultation, right? But I'm going to make inquiries, so that would be good if that happened, right? It would be more proficient, right? I'm not very proficient. And I'm extremely, extremely depressed right now because my oldest daughter, as I have said before, is not getting the proper health care. And because I can't have her in the house due to her illness and the unpredictability that comes around that illness, she's gonna die out in the streets, people, in this weather. And as a mother, how do you think I feel? Right? So, I get pressure headaches now, right? Because we're at the height of this situation coming to a head. Right? Because we know she's not getting the help out on the streets, that's for sure. And I have no resources to help her. And what little resources I do give to her, it's not helping in terms of getting her stabilized where she can heal. All right. So it's murderous. I feel like I'm a very neglectful mother. Right? Because I can't help a child that's dying due to proper health care. Due to improper health care. Due to limited to no health care. Right? So I've been kind of want to cry, right? I'm crying over my daughter. If I'm not crying over my daughter, I'm crying over Uncle John. Okay, I'm back. I'm reading people here, right? Administration of medication. A licensee must ensure that only medication that have been prescribed or ordered by a medical practitioner or nurse practitioner are administered to a person in care. There is a 999.9999999.9.99, and this 90 keep on going with those nines, that John was being medicated. But again, we were not told about it, and neither was John. It was just a calcium pill he was taking, and then near the end, a puffer. A licensee must ensure that employees who store, handle... Okay, we don't want that one. What we want is subject to subsection 4. A licensee must ensure that only employees administer medications to a person in care, and if a person in care is absent from the community care facility, appropriate arrangements are made for the administration of the person in care's medication. So, here comes along this man who's 75 years old, right? Hasn't been on drugs for 20 years, nothing. He had a little bit of, Tylenol 3s when he had his prostate, but outside of that, nothing, right? He functioned better without the pills. And then he ends up in the hospital because of some local flu that was going around town that got into the house, whacked me out for a week straight, week and a half, right? Just as I was starting to recuperate, he was starting to get it. And remember now, he was looking after Andre for me while I slept. That's how bad that flu was. Okay? So by the time I was coming out of the flu, he started to get the flu. But I guess while I was sleeping, he was probably getting a little wore down, right? Because I was sleeping. Now the kids, they'd be up and down the stairs feeding and whatever, but at the end of the day, John was a heavy coffee drinker, which I am now today because of him. And I didn't know that coffee can make old people dehydrated. So by the time we called the ambulance for his turn, right, because he caught the flu, and I didn't want him sleeping on me for a week and a half, and then dying on me and becoming dehydrated while he was sleeping, right? So we made the decision to have him go to the hospital just because it was just better that way. And it turned out for that purpose, it was okay, I suppose, in terms of... Well, I would have taken him to the doctor anyway because I had just insured the car. In between getting better from the flu, I walked off and insured the car so that I could take him to the doctor. But because he got a little loopy before we got to the doctor's office, because I had pretty much just insured the car like 2 or 3 days prior, and he was starting to show signs of delirium, right, from having the lung infection, which is common for his age group. So prior to that, nothing, people, nothing. He was healthy, I fed him good, right? I didn't feed him a lot of junk food. And he kept active, right? I mean, that's why he liked being with us, because he was active. He had a reason to live, right? He liked to run with the pack. So anyway, you know, they release a man that hadn't been on drugs for 20 years. They knew he hadn't been on drugs. And they knew he wasn't responding correctly. Hell, he couldn't even walk properly. We had to demand a walker. Right? Because they didn't want him walking, people. Because they were plotting before they even took him. They just had to figure out a way to do it. Alright? So, if a person in care is absent from the community care facility, appropriate arrangements are made for the administration of the person in care's medication. Person in care's medications. So they just zipped him over straight to the Victoria General Hospital and had the taxpayers pay for that medication that he was on already. Do you see where I'm going with this? At the Yale Road Center. Because they're not going to just start giving him medication, not tell him about it, and then just cut him off the minute they release him from the facility. Right? To only say, well, we don't care what happened to him, even though he's 75 years old. We know he's blind. We know he can't walk. We know we have him on medication that he's not used to. Right? But we're just going to let him walk out the door and not look back. And not follow up on that medication. A licensee may permit a person, and you have to remember he had no ID. Absolutely none when they released him. A licensee may permit a person in care to self-administrate medications if a plan for self-medication is approved by the Medication Safety and Advisory Committee and the medical practitioner or nurse practitioner who prescribed or ordered the medication. Did they give him a prescription before he left? Include in the care plan of the person. Well, that was the thing. It was this big care plan, end of life plan. Oh, it's end of life. And I'm like, end of life? What does that mean, end of life, right? Like they took over his fucking life like he was dying and it was their right to bury him. Basically. And they kept, you know, the social worker kept harping on about the care plan, right? And then she labeled it the end of life plan. Did that go out the door with him when he walked out? Is that what happened? I guess there was no care plan in place. Right? No beginning draft of anything. Did John even exist on their files? A licensee. The licensee in this case, people, would be Fraser Health Authority. It's not Surrey Memorial Hospital. It's not Yale Road Center. The licensee is Fraser Health Authority. That is who the licensee is. Must ensure that if a person in care suffers an adverse reaction to a medication, an employee immediately documents the reaction on the person in care's medication administrative record. So, if they were medicating him, which they were at 99999.99999999999 that they were, that would be documented. And being that there were days when he couldn't even put on his freaking sweater, and I'm like, what's wrong with you, John? And he says, I don't know. But we're being told it's not medication because all he's getting is a calcium pill. Oh, and my apologies for using the wrong word. Convoluted does not mean twist. It's convoluted. The word is convoluted. I was spelling it wrong. And I was pronouncing it wrong because at some point, every now and then, I get these little glitches in my brain where some things just, I don't know, you know? It's like when I sound out words because I used to speak a different language before I began English. Every now and then, I don't hear the English word being pronounced out correctly in my own head and I don't pronounce it out correctly necessarily when I speak it, so therefore it's hard for me to get the E as an A or an A as an E. And so on and so on and so on. Like, this stuff makes me so mad, people, because this is convoluted. This is the actual laws and the rules and the regulations. And they want to, someone said to me, scrape it off the plate. They're just scraping it off the plate. I said, oh, is that what that's called? Right? Just, just get rid of it. Let's see. Okay. Document the reaction and notify both the medical practitioner or nurse practitioner. Well, he couldn't walk that well, people. He was starting to walk a little more towards the end there because my kids were going every day helping him to walk. And that was after we got penalized for asking for a walker to help him versus having to by hand with, holding him up. Right. But he couldn't have walked out of there by himself. And he sure in hell didn't walk out of there by himself. So, now that that's been determined, we need to find out how he was legally released into a situation where these people were basically strangers to him. In terms of, they hadn't been around him in years. And I'm talking years. And all of them basically didn't talk to him for the most part in years. So they released him into the hands of strangers that immediately took him to emergency and say, look how we found him. And then blame me for that. Basically, that's what happened. Right? That's what these videos have been all about all these years, because we're pushing 3 years now, people. 3 years. That's a long time.